It is the fourth budget presentation from the Muhammadu Buhari-led administration. One after the other, the leaders of the National Assembly arrived to a joint sitting of the National Assembly, getting set for the arrival of President Muhammadu Buhari, who is expected to present the 2019 budget proposal. The Vice President's arrival is almost unnoticed due to a very noisy congregation, as some lawmakers chant solidarity songs. A visibly overwhelmed Senate President takes more time to hit the gavel, calling for decorum among the lawmakers.
Freedom come. Freedom come and struggle. Freedom come. Freedom come.
President Buhari arrives into the already divided assembly. While some hail him, others continue chanting freedom songs. The President is in the House of Representatives to present the 2019 budget. This is the first time in the history of Nigeria since the return of democracy that the President would be meeting a visibly divided House. It is the President's last budget presentation to wrap up his 4-year tenure.
This has been my last budget speech to the 8th National Assembly. I will review economic developments over the past 3 years and a half, with particular emphasis on 2018. I will then highlight the budget proposals for 2019.
The President admits that the last 3.5 years have been challenging in the oil and non-oil sector, global trends, politics, trades, and even security.
Here in Nigeria, we have to cope with disruptions in oil production and exports, security challenges, and devastating floods. Through hard work and by the special grace of God, we have weathered these storms and made progress on many fronts, which is why we have cause to be optimistic about the future. The economy has recovered from recession . The economy has recovered from recession. And we had 6 quarters of growth since then. We have done more work with less resources in agriculture, infrastructure, and social investments. We have built better understanding between the federal government and the state on non-partisan fault lines, in particular intervening several times to support states to meet their obligations, including the payment of salaries and pensions. Sustained development is difficult, if not impossible, in an atmosphere of insecurity and poor governance. We have therefore made strenuous and successful efforts to overcome the insurgency in the Northeast and to resolve intercommunal May I appeal to the honorable members that the world is watching us, and we are supposed to be above this.
President Buhari insists that the government led by him has recorded successes in the fight against corruption in public institutions with the introduction of the Treasury single account, adding that the growth domestic product rose to 1.81% in the third quarter of 2018 as against 1.7% in the third quarter of 2017.
We also recorded several successes in economic management. Real gross domestic product growth stood at 1.81% in the third quarter of 2018 compared to 1.7% in the third quarter of 2017. We have had a sustained accretion to foreign exchange reserves from a low of 28.57 billion United States dollars in May 2015 to $42.92 billion by December 2018. This has contributed to exchange rate stability and will provide a buffer against any anticipated external shocks. Inflation has also declined from a peak of 18.72% in January 2017 to 11.28% in November this year. In the area of trade, Nigeria has moved from a deficit to surplus in our trade balance. As at the third quarter of 2018, the trade balance was a surplus of 681.27 billion naira, representing a significant improvement from the deficit of 290.1 billion naira in 2016. This reflects the rebound in crude oil exports, increased non-oil exports, and a reduction in the importation of food and items that can be produced locally.
The president says the government identified 116 abandoned projects in the Ministry of Water Resources and has so far completed and commissioned a number of them, including some rail and road projects. However, lawmakers continue to interrupt the president's speech.
Infrastructure development is also another area in which we have made a lot of progress. Our approach was a logical one. We simply prioritize the completion of critical ongoing projects over the introduction of new ones. For example, the previously abandoned Itape, Ajakuta, Warri rail line is undergoing test runs and will soon be commissioned. We are also on track for the Lagos-Kano rail line, a significant progress. We are also on track for the Lagos-Kano rail line. A significant progress has been made on the Lagos to Ibadan segment of the project. We remain committed to rebuilding and expanding our road network. In 2018, an additional 1,531 kilometers of roads have been constructed and 1,008 kilometers rehabilitated across the country.
The 2018 budget of 9.12 trillion naira was based on a benchmark oil price of $51 per barrel and oil production of 2.3 million barrels per day and an exchange rate of 305 naira to a dollar.
In 2018, average oil production up to end of the third quarter was 1.95 million barrels per day, as against the estimated 2.3 million barrels per day for the entire year. However, average market price of Bonny light crude oil was higher, an average of $74 per barrel as at October, than the benchmark price of $15 in the budget. As at the end of the third quarter, federal government actual aggregate revenue was 2.84 trillion naira, which is 40% higher than 2017 revenue. The overall revenue performance is only 53% of the target in the 2018 budget, largely because some of items are yet to be actualized. We have now rolled this revenue item over to 2019. Of the total appropriation of 9.12 trillion naira, 4.59 trillion naira had been spent by 30th September 2018 against the prorated expenditure target of 6.84 trillion naira. This represents 67% performance.
According to the president, the 2019 budget proposal of 8.83 trillion naira is based on an oil price benchmark of $60 per barrel, oil production estimate of 2.3 million barrels per day, including condensates, exchange rate of 305 naira to a dollar, real GDP growth of 3.01%, and an inflation rate of 9.98%.
The 2019 budget proposal is intended to further place the economy on the path of inclusive, diversified, and sustainable growth in order to continue to lift significant numbers of our students out of poverty. The underlying drives of the 2019 revenue projections have been adjusted to reflect current realities. On the expenditure side, allocations to ministries, departments, and agencies of government were guided by the three objectives of the ERGP, which are: 1, restoring and sustaining growth; 2, investing in our people; and 3, building a globally competitive economy. However, as a responsible administration, we will continue to monitor the situation and will respond to any changes in the international oil price outlook for 2019.
The budget presentation this time is indeed an exceptional one, as it's the first time a president is presenting a budget to an opposition-led National Assembly since the return to democracy in 1999. Lawmakers react to the heckling of the president during the budget presentation.
We knew it was going to happen. We knew the opposition, they were planning to stage a demonstration of a sort. And we also know very well that it's unparliamentary for people to be carrying placards in the chambers. But of course, in Nigeria, anything goes. We went into executive session, we explained to them, we told them that people should put politics aside. This is national interest, and that's why we are having a joint session. We expected a bipartisan approach, particularly when we are talking about budget. But unfortunately, some people thought otherwise. It's not all the opposition members. Some also felt that they should not go that way.
Well, you know, in a democracy, you cannot stop people from showing their anger peacefully. And I think that what we saw today was very few PDP members showing an unparliamentary attitude. And of course, they have a right to do that. And of course, you also saw the reactions of the majority members, and we purely a majority. It was, of course, they were fully dominated. And the unfortunate was that the two presiding officers were PDP. The president had made a speech, very good speech, and laid the budget. When it was time for the two presiding officers who are PDP members to make their speech, and of course raise points where they think the president should look into, they prevented him, they started singing, which means even in their own house, they are not coordinated.
Yeah, my simple thoughts are that really there is nothing unparliamentary about what happened in the plenary today, because it's normal in any democracy. It happens in the House of Commons, it happens in the Congress. There are always agreements, members are bound to be angry, and they express in the way that they thought, they could. So for me, I wouldn't say that it's unparliamentary. They just express their feelings about the state of the nation.
And I guess there was a fair amount of heckling as there was a fair amount of clapping and rejoicing. So it kind of balanced out. But we've always had a parliament that was across the aisle, that in spite of whatever our differences were outside of parliament, that we all agreed on the basic principles of democracy, growing our country, building a country for the Nigerian people. And I'm afraid that I've seen divisiveness that was never in the parliament before.
Legislators also evaluate the 2018 budget, which the president says made a 67% performance.
The implementation itself started very late, and it was because of the late the signing of the budget itself. So you don't expect that within the period of 6 months, because the budget was signed in June, to this day, everything will be implemented. I have never seen a budget in Nigeria, maybe elsewhere too, where you have 100% implementation. And if you listen to what the president said, a lot has been achieved. We have economic issues right now, and we don't expect 100%. So when you are talking of first-line charge, it doesn't mean that because one is a first-line charge, everything has to be implemented. It has to be done according to how it is being received and across board. So what we saw for the past 6 months is not just that they are doing it sectorially to injure one sector against the other.
The president did mention that we are coming out of recession. This has been reflected in the total appropriation that was presented today. 2018, you could see that it was 9.1 trillion. It has come down to 8.7. That is being, realistic. It doesn't want to hide anything to Nigerians. Now, with the 8.7, you could see that releases in 2017 were kind of irregular. But there was an improvement in 2018. That is the reason why we could see a lot of traction, a lot of growth infrastructurally. We cannot deny that. We are seeing them every day.
They expressed concern over revenue shortfalls and the implications for the 2019 budget.
Before today, there were so many insinuations. But after the Mr. President's speech, he made it clear the revenue that we have gotten. When we expected 9-point-something trillion and 7-point-something from oil, we got 4-point-something trillion. And so surely we are going to have shortfalls here and there. And so we cannot ask the president to release 100% National Assembly allocations and then debar others. So he had to spread the money across board. And I think that that's what he has done. The essence of estimate, of course, is what is likely coming in. And so I'm worried. Every Nigerian will be worried as to the shortfalls. But the issue is we have to all gear up to see how we block all the loopholes and ensure I increase our revenue. And I think that that's what we are for as Nigerians.
As you know, that the budget is a projection of our income and how we intend to spend it. And of course, there's a plan for when the shortages come in, including borrowing and all of that. But again, everything must be real. If we're saying that we're coming out of a recession and then we're not able to fund the budget, who are we fooling? Who is fooling who? I mean, we need to be able to say the truth. The parliament is willing to work on the budget and work for the benefit of Nigerians. This is a Nigerian budget, whether we like it or not. It's a budget for the Nigerian people. If we're doing 30% or 20%, or if we're not implementing fully, there is a knock-on effect on the lives of the people, and that's the point. The budget has been laid before the parliament. It's ours now to sit down and go through it with a fine comb to make sure that we avoid some of the pitfalls that we have learned over the past 3 years.
The opposition PDP caucus in the House of Representatives accuses the executive of selective implementation of the 2018 budget, describes as appalling the level of implementation of the 2018 budget.
When there is no release, what are the agencies going to do when you go on oversight? Will you count 3 before you count 1? He should tell us what we had expected was a budget performance. Implement the budget, then bring the next one. You've done the first one. You did not. You did about 40-something% implementation, 30-something%. Then you're doing the next one. Then this one is not even up to 10%, and you're bringing another budget.
The 2019 budget is tagged the budget of consolidation. Major highlight of the budget proposal is the recurrent expenditure at 4.04 trillion naira and the capital expenditure at 2.031 trillion naira. Analyst says it is unlikely for the budget to make a significant impact on the economy.
The budget, in my view, is a very small budget. If you compare the budget to the size of this economy, it is very, very small. And when we look at this relativity, you conclude that it is not likely that the budget of this size can make any significant impact on the economy, particularly on the infrastructure space. This budget is just about 5% of our GDP. The budget is 8.3 trillion. Our GDP is about 113 trillion. So we are looking at just about 5%, which is also an equivalent of about 24 billion US dollars. South Africa, which has a smaller economy, just slightly over 300 billion, has a budget of over $100 billion. Angola, which is also even a much smaller economy, has a budget of over 40 billion US dollars. Here we are, an economy of 200 million people, an economy of a size of about 450 billion, the largest on the continent, with a budget of 24 billion. So this is why at the end of each budget cycle, we don't see any significant impact, because the budget in relation to the size of the economy is too small. But you see, when you have a small pie, by the time you take out recurrent expenditure, which is about 4 trillion, by the time you take out the debt servicing, which is also 2 trillion, what is left in the budget? The total revenue in this budget is 6 trillion. The recurrent expenditure plus the debt servicing is also 6 trillion. So what that is telling us is that the entire revenue is being consumed by both recurrent and debt service. So that means for you to invest in capital expenditure, you have to borrow. So it's a very serious situation. It's a major issue. It's a very fundamental issue, which touches on the structure of the economy and the way the economy is being run.
However, work on the budget is likely to be slow as the country prepares for the general election, even as the usual bickering between the executive and the legislature may be expected in the course of the debate over the budget in the National Assembly.